We're continuing the Sikha of Teira Chadasha Me'iti Eitzei. We are on page 568, in the middle of Sif Hey. You see where we're holding? Ois Beis, in the middle of Sif Hey, there's Ois Hey, which says, U'b'negei la achidish b'halachas ha'teira. Okay, so what did the Rebbe explain so far in the Sikha? The Rebbe is speaking about two different details that it says in the Midrashim regarding the Chiddush Teira L'asad Lavai. Number one, it says that there'll be new secrets of Teira, Pnimiyus HaTeira, the Taimei HaTeira. We'll have a completely different understanding of what we're doing, of what's going on. We'll see secrets that David will reveal through Mashiach. So that we learned last week, and the Rebbe explained that, it will all come b'derech nevuah. David will reveal it to Mashiach, that is. It's coming from a level which is beyond Seichel, so it has to come from a level of nevuah. But Mashiach will also be a Bal Chochmeh, and the Chiddush of the Chochmeh here is that he's able to explain such kind of secrets that are really beyond understanding. But with Tzkayach of Chochmeh, it's not just a regular concept of Chochmeh. What's the regular concept of Chochmeh? You have a person that's very smart, a person that can take very deep in Yonim and explain it and understand it. The Chochmah of Mashiach, when it says he's a Bal Chochmeh, the Bal Chochmeh is a whole different type of Chochmeh. Bal Chochmeh means he can take such things that are really beyond Seichel. That Chochmeh is not a Keli to understand it. And nevertheless, Mashiach will draw down those Nevuas and those deep in Yonim and explain it up in Seichel. It's not the regular Indian of Chochmeh. What is it? There's a mic over here. Let me see if I can... I want me to wear the mic. Okay, good. Is it on or is it not on? We'll find out right now. Okay, say that. Good. Now the Rebbe will explain the answer to the question at the beginning of the Sikha. What does it mean that there'll be a chiddush regarding actual halachas of Teira? That Lasad Lavai, the Sherabar, the Levyasan. So how's the Sherabar going to be shechted Lasad Lavai? With the fins of the Levyasan, which is not a kosher knife to shecht. So how can we make a change in Teira? That's what we'll learn today. It's based on page 568, the very last paragraph on the page, actually. So to address how it is that Mashiach is going to bring new novel halachas in the certain halachas that we know are accepted. Allowing to shech the sherabar with the fins of the with the levyasan. How could this be? So possibly we could say the point, the chiddush that Mashiach will bring is shedinei shchita shebeteira. Those halachas of shchita that it says in the Teira. Sheyiyu gam la'asad lavai, and those halachas will apply even in the future. Loi nemru milachatchila al shchita miyuchadezu. All of the halachas of shchita that it says regarding any time a person shechts to eat, those halachas were not said regarding this shchita. What does that mean? Why wasn't it said regarding this shchita? Where do we find in the Teira that this shchita is an exception in the regular halachas that apply to shchita, including the knife? That has to be a sharp and clear knife, not serrated. How do we know that doesn't apply over here? So the Rebbe begins to explain. We're going to page 569. Okay, you want to learn the Hara? So let's learn the Hara. Sure. Yeah. The Rebbe in the Hara points out that we see Tak and Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says that the halachas apply today. You see Hara 30. Re'egam Tanya, you get a Sakei Desham. The Alter Rebbe asks a question. How could you say Shalimai Mashiach lo yitztarchu leida hilchas sisavehete? The Alter Rebbe there quotes a Zohar, and the simple pshat of the Zohar, it seems like the Zohar says that Lasad Lavai, we're not going to have to know any more halachas of isavehete. The Alter Rebbe says that's impossible. Ki eich, and the first example the Alter Rebbe there says is Ki eich yishchetu karbanis. How are we going to shecht karbanis if we're not going to learn the halachas? V'gam chulin, not only karbanis but any animal whenever you want to eat. Im loyeda hilchas darsa v'chalada, these are halachas of shchita, v'shiyah paislam shchita or pegima sasakin, and the knife that's not exactly perfectly sharp. That's what we're speaking about over here. And Alter Rebbe asks, v'chiyula deish b'tivai, is there a human being that's born naturally? Shiyeh sheichet b'li shiyeh drasa. Person can just shecht, and he'll know naturally how to shecht without ever learning any of these halachas. Of course, it's not possible. Is it possible that you have a knife and the knife remains in shape, sharp, good, to be used for shchita forever, and you never have to sharpen it again. Of course, it's impossible. So we see here, from what the Alter Rebbe says, that Lasid Lavid, the halachas of shchita, all the details, and the halachas of the knife apply. So what happened over here? What is the exception of this shchita of the Sheira Bar? So back into the Sikha, the top paragraph on page 569. Got it? So what do Mefarshim say about this medrash? So they say that this shchita here of the Sheira Bar is going to be something which will be a special instruction for the hour of Hira Shah, that this case is different. So according to these Mefarshim, it's not really a new Torah, there's no change, there's no innovation here. It's just a Hira Shah. It's a temporary thing where Mashiach is going to come and say that over here this is an exception, that you should do this way, that it should be shechted with the fins of the Levyasan. Now the question is, where do we find such a concept of a Hira Shah? So the Rabbi brings the source. There's an Indian of a Hira Shah, Shaharei, Lamadnu, Mechachomim, Rishainim, Mipi Shmua. We learned from the previous, earlier generations, from the Chachamim. We learned from Sukkim and the Torah. If there's anything that a Navi comes and tells you that you should be over on what it says in the Torah. In other words, not that the Navi is coming and telling you that this mitzvah is batal, or he comes and tells you this mitzvah is loisas that does not apply anymore. Then he's changing Torah. No Navi in the world can come and change Torah. But if a Navi comes and tells you a specific mitzvah in Torah, I got a prophecy, an instruction from the Eibishter that right now, temporarily, we're suspending this Issa. Or you should fulfill this thing. That's called a Hira Shah, correct? Shema Loi. So you listen to the Navi. Chutz Avodah Zarah. One exception. Avodah Zarah, a Navi can never come and say that there's an exception, that today you can serve Avodah Zarah. This is only if the Navi is saying that this is an exception, temporarily, for this time. So therefore the Mefarshim say that we're going to have to say that this is what happened over here, or this is what's going to happen with the Sheira Bar. Mashiach is going to come and tell us, a Hira Shah, that it could be shechted without a proper knife. But the Rebbe does not really accept this pshat. The Rebbe takes it a step further, because really, if you think about it, according to what they're saying, so it's not really a Torah chadasha. It's not a new Torah. Rather, what they're saying is that Mashiach will get a prophecy from the Eibishter that this case is an exception. There's no Torah Chadasha. We're not saying that this case there's another Hira in the Torah. It's Hira Shah. It's just a temporary exception. So that's the Torah Chadasha. Why is that called Torah Chadasha? So therefore the Rebbe goes a step further. We can say as follows: this heter allowing to shech the Sheira Bar with the fins of the Levyasan, even if we'll say that it's a Hira Shah, but the nature of this Hira Shah is completely different. The chiddush over here will be in the actual halachas of Torah. The Hira Shah is going to come and teach that true, all halachas of shchita still apply, but regarding this particular shchita, the halachas of shchita do not apply. In other words, this is a completely different type of Hira Shah. What does usually a Hira Shah mean? Let's take the famous example, which the Rebbe will bring soon, regarding Aliyah Bahar Carmel. There's an Isser, you're not allowed to shech the carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So came a time period where the Yidden was serving Avodah Zarah, and Aliyah Navi wanted to show, he wanted to demonstrate to Yidden how the fire is going to come down for the carbon and not for Avodah Zarah. So he told Yidden an instruction, temporarily now we're going to Har HaKarmel and we're going to shech the carbon on Har HaKarmel. So when they shechted the carbon there, what was the Hira Shah? The Hira Shah was that temporarily this is allowed. That's not the Hira Shah. The Hira Shah is, although the action that you're doing is not allowed, but nevertheless, temporarily, you're getting an instruction to do something which is Oster. So even while you're doing it, and even while there's a Hira Shah to go ahead and do it, the Hira Shah is sometimes you have to do things that are forbidden. That's the usual pshat of Hira Shah. What's the pshat of the Hira Shah by Mashiach? Mashiach is going to get the Hira Shah that regarding this shchita, the halachas of shchita don't apply in the first place. That what you're doing is a shchita which is completely perfect and fine and mutter, because the halachas of shchita are suspended when you get to this shchita, so it's a shchita mutaras. It's a shchita which is completely mutter. What does this mean? How? Okay, the Rebbe will explain more details to this. But this is the point here. So again, the Rebbe is basing this on the Mefarshim that it's a Hirah Shah, but the Rebbe is taking it much further. Not Stam Hirah Shah to do something which is Oster, because then there's no Chiddush in Torah. But there is a Chiddush in Torah. This Shchita is mutter to be done without the halachas of Shchita.
This one was not included.
Correct. That's correct. But the thing is, though, this doesn't still really answer the Rebbe's question, because if Mashiach is hearing this from the Eibishter as a prophecy, and there's nowhere in Torah that it could be proven, and there's no way this could be explained, why Taka was it not included in the regular halachas of Shchita? So he's still getting this as a prophecy that over here there should be an exception, and over there this is not included. How could you pass it according to the Nevuah? So the Rebbe is going to address that in the paragraph after the parentheses that we're going to learn now. But first, the point that the pshat of this is it's a hirah shah that this shchita is not included in the halachas. So the Rebbe brings the example that I just spoke about B'negeit and Eliyahu Bahar Carmel and how it works over there. This is actually all based on a sichid in the Parsha Shoftim, the Parsha we just learned. V'yesh lahaisef. So we could add another point of here. Shemitzinu dugmasai gam b'hirah shah. We find this idea also regarding hirah shah. So the Hirah Shah that Eliyahu told the Yidden that they're going to bring a carbon in Hara Carmel. Where is it learned out? The pasuk says, be careful, do not bring any carbon. So from this pasuk we learn, Aval atamayle b'chol makom sheyem elocha hanavi. It says, asher tire, where you see fit. If you decide on your own, I want to bring a carbon in my backyard. I want to bring a carbon somewhere outside the Beis HaMikdash. So those extra words, asher tire, I could have just said, don't bring a carbon anywhere. Why does it say asher tire? Where you think that you see fit to bring a carbon, that's not allowed. But if a Navi comes and tells you to bring a carbon elsewhere, you're allowed. And this is what Eliyahu told the Yidden to bring the carbon in Hara Carmel. That's a drasha that we learn out from the pasuk where it tells you the Isser not to bring a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe asks on this, the L'chaire question is, why do you need a special pasuk to teach me that when it comes to a carbon that you follow what a Navi tells you to bring a carbon elsewhere? Naisaf, aklalis halimud dahirah shah. There's a general pasuk that teaches us the concept of Hirah Shah, Mimasha Kasev, from this that the pasuk says, Elav Tishmon, in last week's parasha. In the pasuk where it says, you got to listen to a Navi, over here. When it says in the pasuk, Elav Tishmon, what do we learn out from this pasuk? Even if a Navi comes and tells you to transgress, not to listen to one of the mitzvahs, as long as he's telling you to do this temporarily, Shemela, you have to listen to him. So we have two different psukim here. One is a pasuk that applies to all taryag mitzvahs. If a Navi comes and tells you temporarily to be over on one of the mitzvahs, you have to listen to him. And then we have a specific pasuk regarding karbanis, that if the Navi tells you to bring the carbon in a place where he sees fit, listen to him. Why do we need an extra pasuk regarding karbanis? So the Ragat Shavar explains, the answer is, Sha'chidish bezeh, the chiddush over here is, she'ein olav shem shchute chutz klal v'hava carbon. It's not like usually when you're doing an isser, but still the Torah tells you temporarily listen to the Navi and do the isser. The chiddush here is that because it says in the Torah, b'chol makom asher tire, when you listen to the Navi and bring the carbon where the Navi says, so then it's not considered to be shchute chutz. It's not a carbon outside of the Beis HaMikdash. This is lachatchila included in the pasuk that if you're following what the Navi says, that's the place, that's the proper place for the carbon. It's not shchute chutz b'chlal. I know. So what the Ragat Shav is saying over here is, she'ez a heter. This is not considered to be a special heter, lavar al isser the shchute chutz. Then in this circumstance, you're allowed to be over on the isser of shechting outside the Beis HaMikdash. Rather, in a case where a Navi tells you shecht in the place where I tell you to, it's not shchute chutz. That's the place, that's the proper place of the carbon. No issue of shchute chutz b'chlal. The Rebbe brings, so this is one example. Now, out of 37, the Rebbe brings another Shmaka example. there are different cases where you're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos, right? One is Pekuach Nefesh, it can be Mechal Shabbos to save a Yid's life. Another is every single Shabbos in the Beis HaMikdash. They brought all the karbanis, many malachas that are being done when you bring a carbon, they're allowed to bring the karbanis on Shabbos. So the Rebbe points out here, there's a huge difference between being Mechal Shabbos for Pekuach Nefesh and being Mechal Shabbos to bring the karbanis. Let's see inside the Order 37. Dugmiladava, another example for this concept. Hachiluk, what's the difference between Hete Chilul Shabbos and Pekuach Nefesh? This that you're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos to save a life. And over there, what does the Gemara say? Omra Taida, the Taida says, Chalel olav Shabbos achas chulu. You should desecrate the Shabbos to save this person's life. And then the Gemara continues there, because then he'll keep many Shabbos later. What does this mean? Shalifisha, temporarily, for this one Shabbos, hitira hatayra lachalel haShabbos. The Torah is allowing you to be mechal Shabbos, to desecrate this Shabbos for the purpose of being mekayim future Shabbos. But this Shabbos, you beferish war mechala. You're desecrating Shabbos. That's one type of heter. But then there's a different heter. La kravas shnei kvasim b'yom Shabbos. The fact that you could bring the two kvasim, which refers to the carbon tamid, kevis in the morning and the kevis at night. Shein zet chia oy heter the chil Shabbos. This is not something that you're pushing off, or there's a special heter that you're being mechal Shabbos every week. Ela shahadin the mechal leha. The whole idea of being mechal Shabbos loynema melechat chila b'negei la hakrav shnei kvasim. Chilul Shabbos doesn't come into play in the first place when it comes to the carbon tamid that you have to bring every day in the Beis HaMikdash, every Shabbos that is, and the same thing when you get to the karbanis musafin. So the same point that Rebbe is saying over here, when you have a hirah shah, there are two ways to understand the hirah shah. Either hirah shah is you have a instruction for the time, for the hour, to go and be oived on Issa of the Torah, or you have a hirah shah where the Eibishter is telling you that over here temporarily you do this, and this is the proper way, the way it's supposed to be done l'chatchila. Because it's an extra pasuk, correct? Yeah, correct. Let's go back inside the Sikha. So now we can say, Shal derech zeh yachidish tehetish chitas shoyer abar b'sampirei alav yasa. This is the extent of the heta that will be regarding shechting the shoyer abar with the fins of the leviasan. Shakadosh Baruch Hu yigala chidish teira. The Eibishter will not only say there's a heter to do this isser, but it'll be mechadash a chidish in teira chidish. This is a chiddush that today nobody has the ability to find the source for this. The Eibishter himself will reveal the source for this. He'll find the source. The Eibishter will show us the source in Torah that the dinim of shchita were not said regarding this. Okay, so basically what the Rebbe is saying is that L'asad Lavi, when it says that we're going to be able to shech the Shoyer Bar with the Sampirei Livyasan, there'll be a makkah for it in Torah. There'll be a pasuk, there'll be somewhere in the Torah that there'll be a makkah for it. Today we can't find that makkah in Torah. We don't know, we don't have any drasha for such a kind of thing, that there's this one shchita that's an exception, and a chanami. Today, any Talmud Vastik, using all the Klalei HaTorah, using all the Yud Gimel Midrash HaTorah in the Drashas Ben, he will not be able to find a makkah in Torah that this one is an exception. But the Eibishter L'asad Lavi will be megala, not only that it's Oster, but you should do it anyways, but he'll be megala, a makkah in Torah Gufa, that this shchita is an exception. Let's see the next paragraph. Let's see the next paragraph. This chiddush that the Eibishter is going to show us in the Torah. So it's something that's so concealed that even a Talmud that learns according to all the klalim of Torah will not be able to find it at all. Only the Eibishter could show you this chiddush. So it's still not part of Torah. What's part of Torah? The Rebbe brought before earlier in the Sikha. The Eibishter gave us a Torah Shebechsav, and then he gave us a Torah Shebal Peh with all the klalim, how to interpret every word in Torah. And that's what we got. You have to use the Yud Gimel Midrash HaTorah and the Drashas Ben. If we cannot find a source for something, according to the Klalei HaTorah, and only the Eibishter could reveal it, so that's Shamayim, that's the Eibishter, Torah Leba Shamayim. So how is it part of Torah? So the Rebbe answers, Yeshleima, we must say as follows, Sha'amelech HaMashiach, Shebal Chochmah Yiyeh Yesem Shleima. Mashiach, which is going to be even wiser than Shleima HaMelech, Yevayer v'Yelamed HaChidush Torah, he will explain and show this Chiddush of Torah that the Eibishter said, "Bebezdin Hagadol Sheb'Yerushalayim." He's going to come, Mashiach himself is going to come to the Bezdin Hagadol in Yerushalayim, and he's going to show them and teach them where in Torah you could see and find this Chiddush that the Eibishter said, the people of the Sanhedrin are going to see it, al pi seichel, that it's there in a certain drasha in the Torah, al pi klali ha-Torah, even according to the klalim of the Torah. Okay, this is a very interesting thing. I mean, the Rebbe doesn't give a clear hesba for this, because on one hand, this is a kind of chiddush that the Zman Hazeh, the greatest Talmud Chacham learning, using all the klali ha-Torah, cannot find it. Lasad la by the Eibishter will be megala this. But once the Eibishter will be megala it, Mashiach will have the ability to show and explain how this is true according to the klali ha-Torah. Not with new klalim, with the klali ha-Torah. It has to be part of Torah. There's nothing outside the framework of Torah. So, sort of two opposites at the same time. On one hand, we cannot figure this out al pi klali ha-Torah. That Mashiach will somehow have the ability to show how the chiddush of the Eibishter does fit into klali ha-Torah. How he's going to do this? Don't ask by me. Fragen by Mashiach. Okay, well, we can see what the Rebbe began. Yeah, you start seeing the Rebbe asks 15 questions, and you think to yourself, impossible to answer all these questions. You come to the end and says, Altz klar. Okay, good. So the Rebbe brings the source for this, what it says in the Rambam, V'kivin shehem ikar Torah shebal peh. The Sanhedrin, they are the source of teaching all of Torah shebal peh. V'hem amudi ha'ira, they are the foundation of all the instructions of Torah. Mehem choyke mishpat yetzel l'chol Yisrael, all halachas that are neschadish in every generation comes from the Sanhedrin. So yeh gama chidush Torah shemiyiti teitzeh. So these chidushim of Torah, the taka comes only from the Eibishter himself. But Mashiach will show them how it makes sense in the kalalim of Torah. It will be kedvarim shalomdu oisam mipi Shmuel. It'll be no different than any other drasha that you have in the Gemara, that it learns it out from a certain pasuk, from a certain extra word, from a certain extra letter, whatever it is. Mashiach is going to be megala, some extra letter in the Torah somewhere, where you'll see that the halachas of shchita don't apply to this shchita. Dvarim shalomdum mipidaitam, and it'll be something that they'll understand on their own. Ba'achas min hamidus shatayra nidreshes ben, with one of the methods that you darshan Torah. V'nira beinayim shadav zakachu. And they will see them for themselves. So this is taka the way it is. They'll agree to this. They're not just going to say something. Mashiach says, we're going to argue with Mashiach. Mashiach gives us a nevuah. Who are we to argue with Mashiach? It's not just going to be b'derech nevuah. But they'll taka see that the emes is that this is the drasha. Okay, so this is all still an inyan, which is really hard to comprehend what's going to really happen over here. Both pratim that the Rebbe explained over here, it's the first point the Rebbe says, that on one hand, the Chiddush Torah of all the secrets, the taimim, the seidus of Torah, are such level of seidus that it's not mavua anywhere, no sefer Kabbalah, it doesn't come from any darge, from any greatest tzaddik, the greatest gilu today cannot be megalit. It comes from a place that's l'maylam and aseichel legamri. It's something that's mufrach al pi seichel. It comes from a level that's completely removed. Yet Mashiach will somehow explain these chidushim al pi seichel, and therefore it becomes part of Torah. It's like sort of two opposite. It's very hard to understand how that's even possible. At the same time, that I was saying over here also, benegay to the halachas. On one hand, it's a chiddush of a halacha that we cannot figure out al pi halachas ha-Torah. But once Mashiach will hear it from the Eibishter, it'll open up a new ability that Mashiach will show and find it in the halachas of Torah, in the klolim of Torah gufa. That's the chiddush.
That's why you can call it chadash.
It's on one hand it's chadasha, but on the other hand you can call it Torah. Torah Chadasha. If it would just be Chadasha, then it would be a Nevuah. It's Torah Chadasha. It's totally brand new, but yet it's explained al pi klali ha-Torah.
More depth. New depth.
A total new depth, a completely new level, but at the same time, part of Torah. It has to fit into the framework and the seichel of Torah.
So that story.
Okay, that's the Nekudas Advarim, huh?
The story of the Gemara that said Lev Shemaim.
Yeah.
So if they would have understood it, if they would have seen it, if they would have,
then it doesn't matter, right? The Rebbe keeps on saying here in the Sikha, that's like a fundamental point of the Sikha. The fact that you hear something al pi nevuah doesn't mean that it cannot become part of Torah. If what you hear al pi nevuah, you could then explain, so then it's not a nevuah anymore. Now you could explain it. Right? This is, even in that Gemara, who was I think Rabbi Shua over there? The Rebbe brings not one of the hardest over here. Whole arichas of that Gemara. And so if you could explain the nevuah al pi seichel, then it becomes part of Torah. That's the point when you get to Mashiach.
He was telling Rabbanim It was that they need to
Paskin it,
understand
paskin it.
Right, but they also need to understand how it was takazai.
Right.
Based on
Correct.
their understanding. It can't just be like a
Nevuah Mulmaila.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Left us wanting more. We'd love to send